Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash right here, and tonight or today, depending on which part of the world you're in, I want to talk about a topic that that might be a bit sensitive for some of you, or you may not agree with what I'm going to say, and like that's a bit of a disclaimer because this topic is particularly sensitive. Just like my stereotypes video, that didn't get much recognition as of now, but I want to talk about a topic that obviously it deals with me, but then it also deals with every other person of African descent. That's right. I'm going to talk about a topic of black people, African people, whatever you describe yourself, but yet we're still all African with heritage. And that's my first thing I want to talk about. You know, what happened to us? We used to be unified. What happened? I mean, there's still some of us that are unified. We still look at the same thing. We still look at what is really going on instead of looking at, arbitrary crap such as, language, you know, how your skin tone looks. Hey, I made a joke about that once before and that got a lot of flack, but it was merely just a joke and a test, and I got my result. Show that people still do care, even though they do the opposite. And then talk about skin tone, obviously like, oh, I come from the Caribbean islands, oh, I come from Japan, oh, I come from the motherland, oh, I come from the Philippines, oh, I come from North America, I come from South America, I come from the south of North America, I come from the north of South America, all that other crap, I come from Brazil. Let me tell you something. No matter which way you put it, no matter where you go, and it's really sad when you see your own people just arguing over the fact that, like, hey, look at me, I'm Brazilian. Oh no, look at me, I'm African American. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not African American. You're just an African in America. So why don't you just sit down and just, don't let the shackles of mental slavery get to you so badly. That's the thing. Don't forget. See, that's the first thing that's going to be on my mind. Why did we forget our heritage? Why? Because what? The TV told us to? The new Slave Master? Slave Master 3.0? And then what? Lil Wayne told us to do it. Nicki Minaj told us what to do. Some of the old school rappers, well, not every single one of them, but some of them turned from like revolutionaries into like millionaires with shackles on them, and the shackles are the nowadays contracts. What happened? And then did we turn our back on our heritage or something? And I'm not trying to say that every black person does this. Let's get this out of the way. Not every black person does this, because there are a few black people that do know the problem. They do know that, hey, we have to stick together as a people. And it's not about teaching hate about white people. It's not teaching hate about Asian people. It's about teaching hate. It's not even about teaching hate in general, but it's about noticing problems and exploiters. And exploiters can come in every different shape, size, creed, color, background, you name it. That's how it's going to go down. And if their allegiance are to someone other than their own people, then they are an enemy. But if their allegiance, well, not allegiance, but if their mind and their heart is in love and truth, listen to them, regardless of color. But let me just get this straight. The reason why I want to talk about my people is because, when I look at my people, sometimes you just wonder, like, wait a minute, what happened to us? We talk about our history. We talk about the great dynasties that we had back in, ancient Kemet. And ancient Kemet, you want to know what's the real name of Egypt? Kemet, or Kushite. And, it's very, the Kushites, Kemites, and, it's very sad when you realize, like, wait a minute. We want to talk about what was going on during ancient Egypt. We want to talk about how royalty were acting, but yet we're acting like a bunch of slaves. That makes no sense. And then we say, oh, the physical act of slavery is gone. This, and then, the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, and then, the Brown versus Board of Ed court case, in 1954, all those were good and gone. All those came and passed, and they got legislated, but yet we were still treated like crap. We still treated like shit. And ironically enough, and during the time of so-called integration, nothing really integrated except the problems. That's the problem. When segregation happened, and no, I know some of you are going to look at me and say, how did segregation cause any more problems than it did with integration? In fact, I think integration is a good thing. And I say, hey, look, you know what, truth be told, I can understand how you can say that integration is a good thing and how integration can actually help and how integration brought people together. And that's beautifully brought people together. But when you look at segregation, look at how the way we built our own schools, we built our own business. We even had ourselves something called a Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had our own black doctors, our own black scientists. Everything was either African or black. We did for ourselves. That's the thing. We used to stand on our own 2 feet. If they wanted to separate with us, fine, cool. We wanted to. But then once we started to integrate, that's when we started getting too dependent on the very same people that put us in shackles. And no, I know that there are white people out there who did not partake in the slave trade, who were against, racism, slavery. I'm not knocking y'all. But at the same time, we're not talking about individuals. We're talking about, a collective. Just like there are individuals in my people that are talking about race issues, they're talking about topics, they're talking about why, during the African diaspora, we were separated by arbitrary borders, especially during the scramble for Africa back at the motherland. The Dutch had this part of the land, the French had this part of the land, and these two people used to communicate with each other. Then, due to these arbitrary borders, couldn't communicate with each other anymore, over because of language barriers that didn't even exist before, or because these fucking countries in Europe wanted money. I know, I curse, but think about it like this. And this is a topic like I said, I really wanted to talk about, but I did not know how to explain myself properly. But now I'm just going to do it because, incidentally, and it's funny too, because we want to recite the lines of Dr. King. We want to recite the lines of so-called Jesus Christ. We want to recite the lines of Malcolm X. But yet we didn't apply to any of the lessons that happened onto us in order to make sure our lives become a better thing. That's the reason why I'm actually very pissed, because when I look at my own people, man, I say, hey, look, that's a beautiful black woman. That's a, strikingly, don't get me wrong. And this is just a compliment. And don't get me out on the wrong thing. I'm just gonna say, hey, look, lovely black man right there. And they're beautiful together. But it's just that, mentally, we still learn how to hate black, even though physically we're free, or so-called free. Yeah, and ironically enough, they set up like these all kinds of tricky ass laws, try to say like, oh, if you do this, you'll be sent to jail, but yeah, we can sell this. And it's funny too, because I remember watching lectures from Dr. Umar Johnson. Yes, you look him up, he's a brilliant man as well. Brilliant school psychologist, child psychologist in general, and brilliant leader as well. And then looking at his work, looking at Shahrazad Ali, Miss Shahrazad Ali, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, and looking at a few other people, of African descent, who said, regardless of how we look, regardless of barriers, we gotta look at the facts. And the fact is the fact that why are we so separated by arbitrary crap? Why black women going against black men? Like, why? That makes no sense. We're black people. We had no problems with each other back then because we knew it was for one thing. It was for survival and it was for unity. Now that we're so-called free, what I mean by so-called free, because mentally, we're not free. We're in fact slaves, trapped. We have no way of thinking for ourselves. And this is not all of us. Some of those who realize the problem are talking about it. And that's beautiful. And some of those who think, oh, let's ignore slavery because, learn about history is for nerds and all that crap. Learn about history doesn't apply to us. And, it's real sad when you realize that, wait a minute, if you ignore your own history, you are doomed to repeat it. And that's what's going on today. I mean, black children, not respecting their elders. And what I mean by elders, I mean people who are like 60, 70, or above. Because you got, typically, you're going to have like black kids going against adults, anyways, because there is no respect in the age ranking. Because adults want to be like teenagers, adults want to act like, yes, I'm a grown up, I can do whatever I want, disrespecting elders as well. And it's very funny when the very same people that try to teach you respect, when I quote unquote teach, are the ones that end up disrespecting the elders, disrespecting their ancestors, and then they want respect themselves. Well, you know what they say: if you disrespect your ancestors, how can you earn the respect of the descendants that you leave behind? And how ironic that this is happening today, and how the way black people, especially those that came from Generation X, and as KRS-One said, Generation X was meant to be marked off as dead or just non-existent. And looking at that and how the way it was funny too, because the conditions that my mom, my dad, my stepdad, my stepmom, how the way my older cousins, they lived through that. They lived through poverty. They lived through crack houses. They lived through drug wars, the so-called, not even drug wars, the so-called war on drugs, which was brought in by the FBI and the CIA. And then, looking at that and how the way it was not even a war on drugs, not even a war on guns, it's not even a war on gangs, it was a war on black people. And then we were killing each other without even realizing that the enemy is killing us slowly. Bringing out, welfare crap, talking about they care for us. Man, if you learn your history and you know what happened to the Native Americans, guess what happened to them? The very same help that they were getting was also killing them. And I know some of you are looking at me and just be like, wait a minute, why are you saying this all of a sudden? Why do you want to talk about black people? And what does history have to do with anything that affects us now? And I'm going to tell you why it affects us now. Because when you don't learn your own history, if you don't want to be taught it, and if you don't understand what the hell is going on and how the way your own heritage comes into play, then you realize that, hey, the reason why this whole thing is happening to us is because we didn't learn our own history. Is because we didn't heed our ancestors' warnings. Because we didn't see like, oh crap, all this is happening because we were arrogant enough to believe in our own enemy. And we were arrogant enough to say like, wait a minute, what the hell are we doing? We're killing each other. And now, let me tell you something. You see this little devilish box right here? You see that right there? The TV? Don't follow that shit, alright? Don't. Because essentially, what the TV does to you, and it's typically how the way things go. And I mentioned before, about Adolf Hitler and how the way he said, no matter how ridiculous the idea is, as long as you keep on pounding it into the people's heads, they will eventually believe it. Now, coming back to the TV, how does that deal with, what's going on with my people? The reason why it deals with my people is because, one, we believe in images. We remember images more than we remember words. We can remember the feeling that we get, but we remember the mental image that comes with it. That's the thing. And two, when we look at images of, so-called European standard or Eurocentric ideals, trying to say that Africa is the poorest continent in the world, which is bullshit in itself. Because if you look at the history of Africa and how the way it was plagued, not only by war, but it was plagued by diseases that were brought on by some other entity other than them. And the fact that war also messed up the water system, messed up the animals. You got illegal poachers in there, and you got people who are saying, oh, this is our land, even though they were not of African descent. Sure, their descendants were born in Africa, but their ancestors were not originally from there. And if you look at Africa as a standpoint, you realize that, hey, Africa is robbed. Africa was being diseased. Africa was, Mother Africa, our homeland, red, black, and green, Pan-Africanist. If you realize that you are for the motherland, you will realize that the motherland is in trouble. I don't care what you call yourself. I don't care if you call yourself Moor, Wapian. I don't care if you call yourself, Hebrew. I don't care if you call yourself a Nation of Islam member. I don't care if you call yourself all these other stupid titles. Not stupid titles, but you understand my drift. If you're trying to purposely separate yourself or try to make yourself look different so you can look good in front of other people, then you essentially fucked up as a person. You essentially fucked up as an individual. And not only that, you fucked up in terms of unity. Because you want to look different from the same group of people that look just like you. So you can look good in front of a group of people that actually want to be for your enslavement, for your own endangerment. And then you think about it like, wait a minute. Because it's just like, wait a minute. How does this all this time with, history? How does this all this time with, African unity? How does this all tie in with black people in general, Bro Man Clash? Tell us, Bro Man Clash. How does all this tie in with, black people in general? The reason why this ties in with black people in general is because, incidentally, when it comes right down to it, black people really need to come together because, something great is gonna, something great, something horrible, something beautiful is gonna happen, and if you're not gonna be there, if you're not gonna be unified, then essentially you're just gonna be lost. And another thing too, if you're gonna be divided because of petty differences, then essentially unity is gonna be at an all-time stagnant because we're not gonna be unified, we're just gonna be separated through unnecessary bullshit. And to make matters even worse and ironically funny, we can claim all these titles, but yet we're still going back to one simple thing. We're going back down because once we die, we become a part of Mother Earth. And no matter which way you go, if your descendants are taught how to love themselves, then they will continue on the same path, either that you left them to go as, or that you're going to leave them on the same path that will lead towards your destruction. And some of you may ask, what does this have to do, with black people? I mean, if you want to be honest, look at how the way some of the adults talk to their kids. They want to talk about why the kids are so undisciplined. Let me tell you something. Maybe the kids wouldn't be so undisciplined if the adults weren't undisciplined. We have undisciplined adults arguing over money, arguing over child support. What the fuck is child support other than just giving money? You know what the funny part is? There can be dads or moms, because there are deadbeat moms as well. There can be dads or moms giving money to the child, saying like, yeah, here's my child support, but won't partake in the child's life. And let me tell you something, that's even worse. You give the image that you care by giving out money, but yet love is what produces child support. Love is what gives the child a standstill on like, wait a minute. Okay, I understand that, you need clothes and all that crap because you need to survive. You need food. You need to survive. But when you don't have that metaphysical essence, the feminine principle and the masculine principle, when you don't have the metaphysical essence of love, trust, unity, and thus a nation, you will destined to be fall. You were destined to fall, and you were destined to be crushed. Now, and the way we talk about our own history is even worse because we don't want to talk about our history, we don't want to talk about how proud we are to be African. Let me tell you something. I'm African and I'm proud. I may have been born in Brooklyn, New York. I may have some Arab blood inside of me. I may have some Native American blood inside of me. I may have some other blood inside of me. But the one that sticks out prominently is African, and I'm proud of it. How come not many of us can say that? We'll say, oh, I got this kind of blood inside of me, so this is my side. I have this kind of blood inside of me, so I'm on that side. And, looking at that, you just look at them and just say, wait a minute, so what about African? He said, why do I want to be associated with African people? Let me tell you something. If you disregard where you came from originally, then don't expect the very same people to help you out. Don't expect the very same people that you want to help you out. because you disregarded not only your own heritage, but you disregarded them because they are also a part of your heritage. Now, when we disrespect, the wishes of our ancestors, be it they are recent or ancient, what I mean by recent, those that recently passed away, like Dr. Joseph Ben. There was also John Henrik Clark. That was back in the 1990s. Dr. Khalid Muhammad. That was back in the 1990s. And then you had, a myriad of other people. Malcolm X, he's an ancestor as well. Even though he's recent, but he was also an ancestor. And then talking about, Dr. King, he was also an ancestor. And guess what? In 3 more years, that will mark the 50th anniversary since Dr. King's Dr. King's assassination. This is the 48th year. And I think it was April 16th or April 19th that it happened. When he was shot down at the Lorraine Motel. You can correct me on that one if you want to. But the reason why I want to talk about this topic is because we want to talk about, how brave a man Dr. King was, how brave a man Mr. Malcolm X was, but yet we won't apply the lessons that they taught us into everyday life. We won't build our own businesses. Sure, we have a couple of barbershops. That's, that'll teach the kids, how to cut hair. That's good. Sure, we have a few beauty salons, but at the same time, I remember something that Dr. Umar once told upon an audience, and how the way Marcus Garvey, a great leader and the creator of the Pan-Africanist movement, even though there were other leaders that defended Africa, but he did it on a global scale. He was very prominent. And guess what? He came from Jamaica, a colony. Well, not exactly a colony, but you catch my drift. It was also a place where African people were also brought over to pick a cash crop. I believe it was sugar. Yeah, sugar. And guess what? He was asked the question, are you Jamaican or are you African? And he said, I would take a continent over an island any day because I am African now, I am African then, I am African forever. And let me tell you that. Now, if he was a Jamaican, and he was talking about Africa, you got other leaders talking about African people. You got Frederick Douglass. You got a few others. You got them talking about African leaders. You got Toussaint L. Overture. Toussaint L. Overture. One of the leaders that helped liberate Haiti and becoming the first free black nation in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti. Never forget that. And the fact that we don't even talk about our own leaders as positively as we talk about so-called positive leaders, like we talk about George Washington, we talk about Abraham Lincoln. He never gave a fuck about the slaves. You want to know why he never gave a fuck about the slaves? Because he knew he had slaves himself. And also in the fact that, let me tell you something else funny too. They say that Lincoln is also part black himself. And they say that he also has a bit of African heritage, which is almost ironic as hell as well. And the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation freed zero, I repeat, 0 slaves. It was the 13th Amendment that freed slaves, not the Emancipation Proclamation. It only freed slaves from rebelling states. And even then, even states that had slaves in, he still, if he liked them more than enough or he saw potential in them, he said, hey, look, you can keep your slaves. You're not in the Emancipation Proclamation. And it was very sad, too, when you realize that the so-called emancipator didn't give a hell about slaves either. He only cared about the Union. He only cared about preserving the Union, not about helping slaves. He was only caring about the Union. He was only caring about the war, not about the people. A typical politician, but at the same time, he did what he thought was right. And incidentally, don't get me wrong, I don't really blame him. And then, funny enough, when I look at when I look at certain leaders, when I look at how the way certain leaders love their people, and then you got Patrice Lumumba back over there in Africa, and you got Emperor Haile the First, Rastafari. Guess the symbol of the lion with the red, gold, and green. Those colors. It was the symbol of the lion. Guess where the name Rastafari came from? Came from Emperor Haile Selassie's name, Rastafari. And we have such a beautiful history, and let's not forget some of our heroines as well. We got Harriet Tubman. She was also a scout, a spy, and she help free her people with the Underground Railroad. And if you forget about her, then you forget about the best. And let's not forget about Madam C.J. Walker. She was one of the few black millionaires that made a product, with the comb and the hair care products. And I understand that, she did something that was potentially great, but it was used in nefarious purposes. Well, not nefarious in a sense, but it was more mental enslavement. Because Marcus Garvey actually went up to her and said, Miss Madam C.J. Walker, I do not agree with this, because you're going to teach African women how to disregard their own Africanity in their hair. And you know what they say about hair, right? Hair contains your DNA, thus your heritage. And without pride in your hair, you ain't got no pride in your heritage. And that's the problem too. We don't have pride in our heritage because we don't have pride in our hair. And some of you may say, what does hair got to do with this anyway? Let me tell you something. You know how the ways scientists prove that, with a follicle of hair, you actually have a bit of strand of your DNA. Think about it like that. And your DNA contains, a bit of who you are and where you're from, and it can trace you back. And when you forget your own heritage or your own hair, you get the pun. Basically, you forget yourself. And how does this time with black people? I mean, look at us, man. We would rather follow, like I said, we would rather follow this than to follow the creed of these colors. Red, the history, thus the heritage of the people. Black, the people, the melanin, the pride that we have. Green, the land, the resources. Especially when we have Mother Africa. And if we forget about Mother Africa, we forget the best in ourselves. And then talking on back about Patrice Lumumba and Thomas Sankara. I said Sankara back in the other video. But they will also advocate for women's rights. And Marcus Garvey, he also trained black women not only in self-defense, but also how to be militant and trained. When I mean trained, I don't mean trained as in like being a slave. I mean being independent and also defending. That's beautiful. And these three men, and there were a few others like them, that said, you know what, our women are also our nation. And if we don't respect the woman, how can you possibly respect the nation? And this goes in with the topic of, why do black people disrespect each other? Especially, why do the black man disrespect the black woman? And why does the black woman disrespect the black man? It goes right down real simple. Not only due to mental slavery, but also due to, TV, also due to, certain other things. And yet people don't want to talk about it because they don't want to talk about the history. And if you connect the dots, you will realize that, wait a minute, our history is connected to what's happening today. And just like my mom said, whatever you do in the past will surely catch up with you in the future. I learned a little bit of that the hard way, but at the same time, to look at it in such a grander scale, I realized, like, wait a minute. Looking at this right now, and how the way history is repeating itself. We have black men, black women. Don't get me wrong, there were also Latino men, white Latino women, white men, white women, everybody was getting killed left and right. But you wanna know why I'm focusing on my people? Because I care about my people. And to look at the fact that, black men, black women are getting shot left and right all because of a fucking stereotype. You realize, like, wait a minute, we're getting shot down because what? Because we don't look the same as you? Or because the images that are portrayed about us are also not only inaccurate, but they're also affecting the way you look at us? And, I've been reading, documents, I've been hearing lectures, and, it's funny how the way when a newborn black boy is born, not even 2 years after, to be labeled a thug before he can even probably utter his first words, his first proper sentence, and he's labeled a thug by a goddamn stereotype. And just like back then, black people were considered to be genetically inferior, were considered to be, very negative, considered to be, all over a bad influence, to the point that there was a disease called negritude. When you a white person rub up against the skin of a black person, your skin will turn black and then your brain will be rendered unusable. That's bullshit. And then looking at how the way certain races anthropologists use, the study of anthropology, which Johann Friedman Blumont, which I mentioned in my stereotype video, talked about how the way we should not use ethnocentrism in anthropology. We should not promote biasness, cultural biasness in anthropology. And you want to know what the funny part is? He was right. Because when you use biasness in social and anthropology, just because, and I'm just going to give it to you off and I'm going to give it to you right, just because a people is different from you doesn't mean shit. Because whatever benefits them the most, benefits them the most. And how the way they live, they live. As long as they're not harming anybody, as long as they're living coexistent, as long as they are thriving as a society with minimum deaths, they are okay. But some people would rather go out and say, we should civilize these people. And what they mean by civilizing? By going over to their land, taking their resources, raping the women, killing the men, killing the boys, killing the babies, making slaves out of them, killing the morale of the people, killing the culture, killing the language. And just as Malcolm X once said, and it kind of applies to today, people lost their fucking minds. And their minds were killed. Their willpower was killed. But a few of us, me included, knowing our history, we say we can't give up on this. We have a beautiful legacy, and we're going to give it up all because of our oppressor? Hell no. And when I talk about, black people, I don't talk about it with a sense of disrespect. I don't talk about it with a sense of, disgust. I don't want to talk about the stereotype and how the way we follow it. You want to know why I'm talking about my people? Because I'm genuinely concerned. And the way we let these portrayals dictate how the way we act is sad. And then we want to know why we're in the predicament we are. Let me tell you something. If you believe in the stereotype that your oppressor gives you, then essentially you doomed yourself before you even began. There's a difference between abusing and disciplining. Adults need to discipline themselves before they discipline their children. And the elders also need to discipline themselves so they can discipline the adults, and the adults can discipline the children, and the children can discipline their children when they have them in the near future, when they become adults. Now, all of this, take into account with all of that, how does all this affect black people? Why black people? And what is the stigma with us claiming, not only, let's leave out the term black, let's talk about the term African, because that's the thing, that's the term, that's the, that's the language, no, not language, that's our home, that's our heritage. And to forget about who we are and to forget about the problems that we face is to also spit in the face of our ancestors who also died for us. And then to look at that problem and to look at, wait a minute, what's going on? Why are we, killing each other? Because we doom each other because we would rather not look at our own heritage, we would rather not look at our own history, we would rather look at each other as disgusting, pitiful slaves. And sometimes, and I'm just going to keep it off, I'm going to keep it right. Sometimes when I watch, Beyond Scared Straight, and I look at this, when I look at the prisoners and I look at the prison guards, I look at the arrogance of the prison guards, and I look at the stupidity of the slaves. No, not slaves, sorry about that. The prisoners. And I know it's all acting and it's all that crap, and how the way prisoners are just doing that just to teach the youth a lesson. But it also goes into tying with the fact that if you don't know yourself, you essentially become a prisoner, because prisoners, what are prisoners typically known for? They don't really know their rights. Well, some of them do, such as political prisoners, and they don't know what cause they're fighting for. Thus, they get locked up. Essentially, they don't know their own responsibility. We got not even that. And I know there are some prisoners, they, sold drugs so they could benefit, so they could help, make sure their families are okay. Some sold drugs so they could survive. I understand, but at the same time, that's not the way to go. Essentially, we fell right into the trap of our oppressor. And the fact that we fell into the trap, and the fact that we essentially failed as a people, not all of us failed as a people. And I'm not talking about individuals, but we are slowly coming back up. I noticed that. But it's real sad when you look at our people and you say, like, wait a minute. You look at us and you want to talk about how we are criminals, we are stupid, we don't even love each other. Let me tell you something. We need to stop with black on black hate. We need to stop with black on black crime. We need to come back with black families, black love, and black understanding. And some of you may say understanding is colorless, genderless. I know. But when people don't even understand each other, they eventually kill each other. And that's what's going on with our people today. And I want to talk about this because, I'm genuinely concerned. And I know it's not all of us. There are some of us who saying, like, wait a minute, we should stop this because this killing shit is, bullshit. Why are we killing each other over scraps? Why are we killing each other over, over something like a trophy? Why are we fighting over a woman who have no merits? Why are black women fighting over a man who has no merits? We're killing each other over bullshit. We're killing each other over scraps. And it's real sad when you look at when we look at each other and we realize, like, wait a minute, we have the potential to be something far greater than what we perceive to be. And it's true. And the black youth, me included, we have the potential to be something far greater, but we want to fit in. We want to be disciplined. We want to be told what to do. Even though we may not act on it, but we do like being told what to do. It's just that there's a certain spark that will hit us at that right moment in time, and when it hits us, we realize, like, wait a minute, I would rather follow this guy because this guy is a leader, and he's talking about something that not even I would even think about. Let me give him a listen. And talking about the black youth, we are lost. We are people who don't even know our own heritage. A few of us do, but some of us are scared to talk about it because of what? Because we were made fun of for being intelligent when we were younger. Oh, we were considered to be the nerds. We were considered to be the outcasts. As some of those, as the slave inclined minds of some of my people would say, you say, yo, you. I know I said this a couple of times, but this is a quotation. Don't Don't think I'm saying this because I enjoy saying it, because this is a wretched word, and it's a word that describes our own wretchedness. And yeah, you a bitch ass nigga though, man. Why you being like a pussy, son? Let me tell you something. That word, the N word, that's a word that describes our own wretchedness. Like Richard Pryor once said, that word describes our own wretchedness. And if you let that get into context, black women are not bitches, they are queens. Black women, they are the mothers of civilization. They are not hoes. Black women, they are, intelligent, beautiful, and I wouldn't mind having any other woman whatsoever. Matter of fact, the black woman, to me, is the highest woman. And some of you may say, why you say that? Because that's not only my preference, but because I love her. And as a black man, I have to be the best in order to show that, not only to show, but to know that, hey, there is a future in this bleak, dark age of black people. And to talk about the black youth, we need to be taught. We need to learn how to be a people instead of trying to be slaves. See, that's all I'm seeing, just slaves. How are we even taught? Slaves. The prison industrial system, that's just another form of slavery. And to look at the prison industrial system, prison guards, they getting money. And, you got prisoners, they're in chains, some of them picking, some of them, doing iron work, some of them making food, some of them, working in there for 35 cents an hour. Basically slave wages. But ironically enough, that's not slave wages, because slaves work for free. And they work from dawn until fucking dusk. And that's real sad too, when you realize that America hasn't even changed, even though America claimed it did. Congress is still majority white, even though our president is so-called black, even though the first family is black. Just because, like I said before, and some of you may not agree with me, just because we have a black face in a White House doesn't change the fact that we are still in trouble. And sad enough, I noticed that Barack Obama hasn't really done anything for us at all. Yet, we call him, the next Dr. King, the dream. Which in fact, even though he has the skin of the dream, but in fact, he's just a nightmare in disguise. He did more for gay people, and I understand, gay people felt happy. And that's cool too. Let them have their time to shine, but don't use our struggle to benefit your struggle. That's one thing I will get off, and I will get off straight. Our struggle is still continuing, even after all these years. Matter of fact, even after like 3 centuries, our struggle is still continuing. But at the same time, at the same token, we should stop killing each other. Because why are we killing each other? I mean, we were not only killed off like in the Caribbean, we were also killed off here in the Americas. Man, our heritage, man, we were not only, our heritage was killed off, our minds were killed off. And what did Malcolm X once say? Have you forgotten that once we were born here, we were robbed of our name, robbed of our language, we lost our religion, our culture, our God. And many of us, by the way we act, we even lost our minds. And this applies till today, to today. But the greatest thing that we need to do is to not only recognize the problem, but we also need to squash it. And how to squash it? Teach the youth the truth. Teach the youth about our glorious heritage. Teach our youth about slavery. Teach them how to avoid it. Teach them about law. Teach them about how to defend themselves. Teach them how to be happy. Teach them how to look at not only at the good, but how to build good things. Also from scraps, and also how to build businesses. Teach them how to be intelligent. Teach them how to be disciplined. Teach them not how to be happy, but to see that, hey, even if there is bad, I still have to be strong. The future of this generation, the future of future generations, that's what I'm worried about. My time is gonna, my time came, no, my time is coming, but it's also going to pass. See, like my mom, my dad's, my stepmom, my stepdad's generation, their times it's nearly coming to a halt, just as my time is coming now. It's coming, brief. It's coming up. My elders, they can teach me about the past, but in the end, I have to. In the end, that's all they can do. They can teach us about what happened back then and how we can stay unified now. And I know some of you are not going to agree with what I said, and some of you may say like, bro, man, Clash, why are you talking about this? Don't you think that this topic is getting long, and don't you think talking about race is overdue? And don't you think black people, we see black people in businesses, we see black people, they're in colleges. I know the whole deal, man. I know what you're gonna say. But at the same time, if you're black and you're listening to this, don't look at the physical, look at the mental. Look at how the way certain black businesses, certain black people, such as 50 Cent, Jay-Z, some of them they are doing right, but are they doing it because they choose to, or are they doing it just so they could look good, or are they doing it because, they're slave masters, the contract are telling them how to be? And if you really want me to give it to you straight and give it to you off and give it to you right, look at some of us. Look at how the way we look at college and we say, oh, I have college education. Oh, I'm better than some of these little small time Negroes out here. I used to think the same way too. But then, as I grew older, the more I realized, I said, wait a minute. This is bullshit. I mean, class, bullshit. Gender, bullshit. Race, that's bullshit. But at the same time, when you look at it, it's just like, wait a minute. You're going to let titles, you're going to let petty fame, you're going to let egotism, you're going to let all that stupid crap get into your head and not see the problem. And I looked at back then, and I'm glad that I've awakened to the truth now. And I know some of you are not going to agree with what I say, but we really need to come together. Not about that, but what I said, all before. But at the same time, we need to come together. We need to realize, like, wait a minute. This is what we need to do. Because right now, we're in a time where black unity is necessary. It's not about, oh, he's black and I'm black, we should kill each other. No. Turn off the TV, turn off the bullshit. We're just like what Carter G. Woodson once put out, the miseducation of the Negro. We are being miseducated to kill ourselves. We are being miseducated to hate ourselves. We are being miseducated to look at ourselves and say we are wretched. We are miseducated to look at ourselves and say, yo, what you looking at, nigga? Yo, bitch, come over here. No. That word, those two words, never. I repeat, never look at another black man and say, yo, nigga, come over here. No, don't call me my nigga. You can call me bro. You can call me, what's going on, home front? What's going on, friend? Yeah, that's cool. But don't call me nigga. Don't call me that. That's first and foremost. Don't do that. Because like Rich Pride once said, that word describes our own wretchedness. And calling a black woman a bitch? No. Don't do that ever again. Because you know what, man? I'm fed up. I'm fed up with all this crap. I never called a black man, never like that. Not casually. And calling a black woman that, but I never called her that out of positivity. I said that either out of anger or out of frustration. And even then, it was still, horrible. But, what I gotta say about all this, we should, come together. And some of you may not agree, but honestly, we have to come together. We have to look at, now that it was different, not look at, look at the place that we come from, looking at like the heritage, looking at the fact that we speak a different language. No, we gotta look at what's the same. We gotta look at the fact that, wait a minute, this is our people. We are African. That's the beauty of it. And if you don't like it, then hell, I can't help you. And with that, YouTube, this is Broman Clash saying like I won, and I'm just gonna keep it real with you. I've always wanted to talk about this. Now I got to. Hope you have a great night tonight or day, depending on which part of the world you're in. And if you don't like what I have to say, then dislike. Leave a comment. If it's constructive, okay. But if you like it, you can leave a comment, like, subscribe, share. You can do whatever you want. But honestly, I just hope you learned something.